What's up, everybody? Welcome to our first weekend roundup video here on Touchline Talk. We'll be doing this every Monday morning. We are starting this initial one, the only place you can start, Liverpool, Manchester City, FA Cup semi-final, right after they played the previous weekend in a thriller in the Premier League. This was the worst first half for Manchester City I can remember in the Pep Guardiola era. There was absolutely nothing happening. Yes, they made the changes coming off of the Champions League and the grueling battle against Atletico Madrid. That's still not an explanation for what happened. Liverpool did what Liverpool did in the second half of that meeting in the Premier League just a matter of days ago, which is they got that high press set and were dictating the terms of the game, which is something you rarely see against Manchester City. And Liverpool is one of the few teams in the world capable of doing it. It was going back and forth in the Premier League meeting, where you sometimes it was Manchester City's press that was causing Liverpool all kinds of issues. Sometimes it was Liverpool. They were sort of trading control of the game. This one had none of the back and forth. Liverpool just came out with much more energy. Of course, the 11 they put on the field was better because they were able to rotate some players when it came to that second leg of their Champions League matchup because they were in a better position. And then you actually start getting to the goals. The first one, it's just Ibrahim Konate on a set piece, losing markers, lack of attention to detail there from Manchester City's perspective. And then right after that, it's compounded by a terrible mistake from Zach Steffen. Yes, John Stones doesn't exactly help him by dawdling on the ball and then sending it back to him. But at the end of the day, you've got to get that ball out of your feet and you've got to clear it. And this is the perfect dichotomy between Zach Steffen and Ederson. Because Ederson had an almost identical situation in the Premier League game. The ball was inches away from going into his net of his own doing, and he was not bothered by the entire thing, and he got the ball out fine. Part of that is the fact he plays every week, and part of that is the fact that Zach Steffen is not Ederson. And so when it comes to the U.S. men's national team in this goalkeeper conversation, I'm going to keep harping on this point, and it is why I am absolutely on the side of Matt Turner, assuming these two guys are both going to not be playing regularly. And Greg Berhalter, his top three options likely will not be preferred number ones at their clubs. Now, things could happen summer transfer window, but assuming we are in the position we are now, from a U.S. men's national team perspective, this is not the first time this has happened to Zach Steffen. It happened in last year's FA Cup semifinal on the exact same field. It was a different kind of thing, but it was that poor decision making, the lack of awareness, the inability to react quickly. And then the other part of it is the reason that Zach Steffen has that number one job for the U.S. is because he's a better distributor, he's better at the ball at his feet than Matt Turner. Yes, that's true. I don't care. Zach Steffen is not the kind of player who is going to impact a game with his feet the way Ederson can. And the way Manchester City plays, if I'm Pep Guardiola and I want to value that, that's understandable because things changed when Ederson got there. The Pep system, there's absolutely a benefit to having a world-class distributor in net, even at the expense of some kind of traditional goalkeeping things, you can argue. That is not the case with the U.S. men's national team. Sure, it helps. And yes, Berhalter wants to play out of the back. But particularly when you get to a World Cup and the teams you're playing against are going to be of a comparable or sometimes even better skill level, especially if the U.S. gets where the U.S. wants to be, they are not going to be controlling possession in these games the way that they do in CONCACAF. It's just not how this is going to work. You're going to see more of the sort of traditional counter-attacking, staying compact defensively kind of things. As good as this team is technically, there are teams that are better, obviously. Which is why I want the guy who's excellent at something. And that's Matt Turner. Matt Turner is not a great shot stopper. Matt Turner is a world-class shot stopper. And the other part of this is, if Zach Steffen's playing every week, does he make that mistake? Probably not. He's probably got a better sense of what's happening, comfortable within the flow of the game, realizing what's happening, and he gets the ball out quicker, and he takes a touch away from Sadio Mane instead of killing the ball right in front of him and allowing Mane to pounce. Those kind of things. To me, this is not some kind of... I don't want to go after Zach Steffen for this too much. He's a good goalkeeper. He made a terrible mistake, at least in part because he doesn't play very often. That's the kind of stuff you can't simulate in training. It doesn't matter if you're saving shots from Kevin De Bruyne and Raheem Sterling and Riyad Mahrez and you go down the list, Phil Foden. That's the stuff you can't prepare for. You know what you can stay sharp at? The stuff Matt Turner is really good at. So if this is the reality for the U.S. men's national team heading into the World Cup, give me Matt Turner all day long. I want the goalie who I can trust to not make massive mistakes and can absolutely win me a game or give me a point that I didn't deserve with his traditional goalkeeping skills. We'll figure out the playing out of the back part. That is not my concern. Now, this could completely change, and I referenced this before. If Zach Steffen goes on loan somewhere and is playing regularly and is in good form heading into the World Cup and Matt Turner is sitting behind Aaron Ramsdale on Arsenal's bench, then I will absolutely reconsider this. So we could be having a completely different conversation about time Greg Berhalter has to make this decision. But this is not the first time this has happened, and quite frankly, there have just not been many times Zach Steffen has looked impressive in a U.S. jersey since he made the move to Manchester City. You gotta play. This was a perfect example of why. And why I am absolutely on Matt Turner's team if the situation does not change heading into the fall of the World Cup. City do get back into the game. Jack Grealish scores right out of halftime. All of a sudden things get a little interesting. They get one back at the very, very end to make it an exciting stoppage time. But at the end of the day, it is Liverpool who go through. Absolutely deserving winners. They were tremendous in the first half. And the one thing I want to harp on here is, and I also wrote about this in my 5 Things from the Week that just came out on our Substack. What is making the difference for Liverpool this year, and the reason why Liverpool is still in contention for a quadruple, and getting pretty close to at least playing in 3 finals. They've got 1 trophy. They're in the final of the FA Cup. If they can handle Villarreal, they're in the final of the Champions League, and of course they're right there with City in the Premier League. It's the fact that this is no longer a 15-man team with 11 defined starters and some guys who can make contributions. Right? We are not wondering what happens if Mo Salah gets hurt in a Champions League final anymore. Of course, it matters he's their best player. But this is completely different than when he had to go off against Real Madrid, right? That was kind of, oh my goodness, what are Liverpool going to do? You know what they're going to do now? They're going to bring on Diogo Jota or Luis Diaz off the bench. And Roberto Firmino, who was in that starting lineup, is still not even going to be on the field. He's going to be the next attacker in reserve because they have 5 guys for 3 spots up top, at least 6 for 3 in the midfield. You've got 3 center backs you can count on because Ibrahim Konate is absolutely going to become a star. He's already earning Jurgen Klopp's trust. He's scoring goals like crazy right now. And you've got 2 reliable left backs. Okay, yes, the backup right back spot is a little bit of question, but you've got Joe Gomez who can play there. You've got James Milner who's incredibly experienced. And Trent Alexander-Arnold who's going to start every meaningful game assuming he's healthy. That is the difference. That Liverpool bench does not look all that different than Manchester City's at this point. When they did this in 2019-20, where they were, right, the year they ran away with the Premier League, in December of 2019, after they won the Club World Cup, it was a question of, well, how many trophies can they claim here? They're clearly the best team in the world, right? They're still in the Champions League. They're still in the FA Cup. We're going to win the Premier League if they didn't fall apart. And so it was, well, what can they do? And by the time we got to the middle of March, Atleti had knocked them out early in the Champions League. They got through the group stage, and that was it. They also lost in the FA Cup. And so all of a sudden, they were just playing for a Premier League title that they were going to waltz to. That is the difference. They are still alive on every meaningful front, and instead of sacrificing the Carabao Cup with their youth team like they did because they had to go to the Club World Cup, they won it this year. Their starting 11 was always every bit as good as Manchester City's once Klopp got his guys in there, Van Dijk, Allison, and they had the complete team. What is different now is that the drop-off when you're bringing substitutes is next to none. They've got the firepower on the bench just like Manchester City does. It is getting close to turning the tables ever so slightly in the favor of Liverpool in this battle for dominance in England and being the best team in the world. We're going to see how this plays out. I still don't think they're winning all four. Manchester City's going to have something to say about this. But that is what has changed about this Liverpool team. The other semifinal, Crystal Palace, Chelsea. Not a good first half from Chelsea. Crystal Palace was very comfortable. Had some opportunities here or there. I mean, Chukwueze Kouyaté had two high-quality chances that were some of the better ones of the game. You got into the second half and you thought if Palace can just kind of keep this up, stay compact, Chelsea's not really bothering them. You've got Zaha out there who can go steal you a goal. They were absolutely in this game. And instead, Chelsea came out after halftime like a team knowing they were playing to salvage their season because that's what they were doing. And took control of the game, and by the time you got to the 80th, 85th minute, it was more or less over. Right? Chelsea, valiant effort in the Champions League, but their defense of that is over. They're not winning the league. They're pretty comfortable when it comes to the Premier League, especially with Arsenal and Tottenham falling off here. They're pretty safely in the top four. This is their opportunity for a trophy. And boy, did they deliver in the second half. It's the 5th final in 6 seasons for Chelsea, and they're just 1-3 in the first 4. So they're absolutely capable of beating Liverpool. Of course, Liverpool are going to be your favorites. And they haven't had success when it gets to that next game. They've been excellent in semifinals. Your goals come from Ruben Loftus-Cheek and Mason Mount. Ruben Loftus-Cheek comes in the first half after Mateo Kovacic, who's arguably their most important player, gets hurt. Instead of going with N'Golo Kante, Thomas Tuchel goes with Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Boy, did that pay off. Loftus-Cheek was arguably the best player on the field in this game. He scored a terrific goal. He created a couple other chances, was dangerous with the ball at his feet, and you saw all of those things that you always hope to see from Ruben Loftus-Cheek that aren't always there. He was dynamic. He was outstanding. And the way this is going, there is every opportunity for him to end up on that plane to the World Cup in the fall. From a club perspective and a sort of how that translates to the national team perspective. Chelsea have a lot of personnel questions that need to be answered with particularly the midfield and, of course, Antonio Rudiger. There's a lot going on here, but with this ownership change, once that becomes official and you've got new people making decisions about how much money is going to be spent and where it's going, there's a good opportunity. There's going to be some spots for the taking in that midfield, and Ruben Loftus-Cheek is going to be at the top of that list, especially with these kind of performances. And if he gets regular starts, because he has stayed healthy this year, he's got plenty of appearances, he's playing all over the field. If he can really break into that starting 11 consistently next season, Gareth Southgate seems to be a fan. And there are some questions, or just kind of not even exactly sure how to frame it, but there are spots for taking, I feel like, in that England midfield, because you have guys that do different things, but do you really care about that one thing? Is James Maddison going to be a factor here? What role does Jack Grealish play? Where are you playing Phil Foden? You've got your Declan Rice, your Calvin Phillips, your Jordan Henderson likely, but there are, Dele Alli is nowhere to be found at the moment. There's absolutely a spot for him on that roster if he keeps this up. And I believe he's going to get every opportunity to earn that if he performs like he did in this game. He was absolutely sensational. So there you go, Chelsea, Liverpool, FA Cup final, should be fantastic. The other thing I want to touch on quick before we get out of here, Sean Dyche let go by Burnley on Friday. They get a draw in a game they were winning to move within 3 points, having played an extra game of safety, also known as Everton at this moment. And I went through sort of Dyche's accomplishments and my 5 things from the week on the Substack. The only point I want to make here is when you are a team like Burnley, to fire arguably the most accomplished manager in your history, almost certainly, the longest tenured manager in the Premier League, with 8 games left, being 4 points from safety, that's where they were when they fired him, with the hope that changing things up is going to keep you in the top flight next season and save you from the financial ramifications of that. To prioritize that, or make that decision, take that risk, basically hoping for a miracle, over having Sean Dyche to lead that retooling effort and make an immediate push to go back up, is remarkably bold. It's not just the firing of, this club legend who's led Burnley to unprecedented heights. It's the fact that this is not Leeds, this is not Newcastle, where your club history, your size, there comes with that an expectation to stay in the Premier League. Everton falls into this category this year too, right? Of just stay up, whatever it takes. We'll figure it out because we could absolutely be competing for Europe next year. This was coming. You saw the drop off last year. You saw the struggles this year. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Sean Dyche got no financial backing for a long time, and then finally this year with the ownership change, there's been, Maxwell Cornet has been fantastic. That was the first sort of noteworthy signing they've had that I can remember in a long, long time. This is the result of that. And so to basically take the we're staying up at whatever cost approach, it's one thing to do it if you were 17th and you feel like a new voice and a little bit of a boost is going to keep us where we need to be. It's something different entirely to say we are going to try and dig out of a 4-point hole in 8 games, chasing a team that is much more talented than we are. As bad as Everton's been this season, they're still talented. And to fire the guy who, oh, by the way, 2 full seasons in the championship, 2 automatic promotions. Yes, ultimately this comes down to being in the Premier League. I get that. All I'm saying is, what do you think is more likely from a long-term stability standpoint of getting back to where Burnley where they were safely in the Premier League, getting over 40 points, I think it was 5 straight seasons? Is it that they're going to climb out of this hole? Or is it that you let Sean Dyche reset things in the summer and then build this back up with fresh voices, fresh players, new perspective, and sort of make another run at it, where his voice isn't as old as the same players who have been around because you're not refreshing the squad? That's the part of this that is getting overlooked, I feel like, and is so bold, is, to me, your best shot of actually staying in the Premier League long term is to hope against hope that Dyche can pull out a miracle this year. And even if he doesn't, to say, okay, we're going to go right, we trust him to get us right back up. We've got some talent, especially when you're comparing it to other championship teams. And then we're going to give him the resources he needs. We've learned our lesson, and we believe he can keep us there because he's proven he can. I don't know what a post-Sean Dyche Burnley in the championship looks like. I'm not convinced they're just going to come back up. And I'm certainly not convinced that this is, whatever they end up doing managerial-wise through the end of the season is going to keep them safe. It'd be something else if you were trying to avoid getting to the spot they were. They got to that spot and then said, well, the only thing we can do to change is fire the manager, so let's do that because we got to stay up. Of course it's not fair to Dyche. The financial realities of the Premier League aren't fair. And he knew that from the minute they got into this relegation scrap. But that's the part of this, is you are risking the long-term future of this club on the hope of a miracle. Because this is not a team, you know, your West Broms, your Norwiches, Bournemouth to a certain extent have kind of gotten there where you trust them to just kind of keep this thing going back and forth. They survive the drop because they don't invest a whole lot. I'm not convinced Burnley's in that category. We'll see what happens. We'll see where Sean Dyche goes. And the other interesting question is, what does a non-Burnley Sean Dyche team look like? Are they a little more ambitious in attack? We'll see. But truly, one of the most remarkable accomplishments we've had in the Premier League in a while is what he did at that club. And ultimately, he changed their perspective, and it cost him his job. Because if they hadn't reached the heights they had, I'm not sure we would be in the situation we are now. But that is where we are. That is our video for today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe both on YouTube and to the Substack for all of our content coming out. And we will see you back for the live show on Wednesday.